Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams, and I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is Calvary 316. If you're local, let me invite you to come be my guest one Sunday morning soon. Our service begins promptly at 10:30 a.m. If you aren't local, but let's say you're looking for a good church, a church that teaches the Bible, you can always attend Calvary 316 digitally via our Sunday service stream. To learn more about the church, visit calvary316.tv. If you want to access our teaching media, I just finished a series in the book of Daniel, about to start a new series in the book of Revelation. Check out c316.tv. Or if you want to watch on Sunday, if you want to join us digitally, you can find our YouTube channel and subscribe. Just visit calvary316.live. I do hope that wherever you're listening or however you're listening, whether you're listening on air via one of our wonderful radio partners or listening through the podcast, every episode of this show is podcasted on Apple, Google, as well as Spotify. Or maybe you happen to be watching the live video recording of the Outlaw Radio Show via our YouTube channel, which is outlawradio.live. Regardless, I do hope you stay with me over the next hour as I seek to deconstruct the negative perception that the world has of Christians by boldly discussing today's relevant topics in an honest and genuine way. I can't help but start out today discussing what's going on in our major sports. If you've listened to the show for any length of time, grew up a sports fan, grew up playing sports. Baseball, primarily, is my passion. But I'm a diehard Atlanta Hawks fan. I love basketball. I enjoy watching the Falcons, although they've been terrible for years. But, you know, we'll still watch them. Georgia Bulldog through and through. Go Dogs. Have even kind of dipped my toe in the old MLS waters, watching a little Atlanta United. I watch golf, the Masters. I'm a bit of a geek for. I watch all the major golf tournaments. I'll watch the Kentucky Derby. If it's a boring Saturday, I will watch croquet if it's on television. Rugby, American football. It doesn't matter. I'm a sports fan. Months ago, if you were a sports fan, the worst case scenario hit us hard. COVID, this coronavirus, this pandemic, not only did it kind of screech to a halt our economy, our way of living, school, church, but all major sports were suspended. I felt so bad for the high school kids, especially the seniors. You know, they were going into their baseball season, their final opportunity to start, you know, waiting in line. This is it. The last year for many of these kids they'll ever play ball. Last chance to make an impression on college recruiters, or scouts, and they completely lost the season. Same with soccer. It was a shame. Like, we lost athletics for the spring. Our ability to watch sports. That pit in my stomach when you heard that spring training, you know, we're a week away from opening day, and spring training has been suspended, been put on indefinite hold. Sports. We're in the middle of an NBA season. It stopped. You know, gearing up for the playoffs. It ceased. MLS was getting ready to start playing. They couldn't. The Masters canceled. Golf tournaments. I mean, if you were a sports fan, let's be real. This spring was about as close to the apocalypse as you could get. I mean, there was virtually nothing to watch. In fact, ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, had to revert to weekend after weekend of re-airing old sporting events. That was kind of cool for like maybe the first weekend, but it didn't take very long for that to get, like, I've already seen this. I've seen the Braves win the World Series in 1995. Thank you for replaying this. Thank you for also replaying all the other series that we lost, because the Braves did a lot of that in important games in the 90s. Anyway, were you watching old golf? I mean, good grief. You had Tiger Woods, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady and Phil Mickelson do a charity golf tournament in the pouring down rain, and like millions and millions of people watch it because we were starved for sports. Well, as things have slowly began to reopen, as we've started to normalize as best as we can coming out of the pandemic, as we're kind of wading through this murky balance of the solution, the remedy can't be worse than the disease. Like, we can't keep our economy shut down. People can't go without work. Like, there might not be an economy to come back to if we allow these shutdowns to continue. Not to mention, people are social. Sheltering in place, as far as just the mental health, people can't do this indefinitely. We'll get to that maybe a little bit later on. Some interesting statistics about suicide. People are trying to figure out how to get back to school. Some schools are doing a hybrid. Other schools are full back in person. Other schools have been doing online learning, but are now getting ready to kind of phase back in. Again, we've all been trying to figure things out. And in the process of this, it was exciting because the NBA announced that they were going to go into a bubble environment in Orlando, Disney, and they were going to play about a week of regular season games to set the seeding for the playoffs, and then they were going to do the full playoffs in this bubble. No one was allowed to leave. Everyone that showed up was tested, quarantined. This was a completely controlled environment. Scientifically, that made sense. And hey, a lot of us were just excited to have basketball. In the process, Major League Baseball, which I honestly did not think we would have a baseball season. I thought as soon as the players' union and the owners started talking about money, that becomes toxic in baseball. I thought there was no way that we were going to have a season, but sure enough, they settled on a 60-game season. It's been really interesting. Teams are testing. When a player tests positive, the team goes into lockdowns. The Braves have played 30 games. We've played half of our season, but you got teams like the Marlins that have played only a quarter of their season because, again, they started the season with kind of an outbreak in the clubhouse. Interestingly, none of these people have died. They've all recovered, all gotten back to playing baseball. 60 games, we'll take it. I mean, if you're a sports fan just dying for this stuff, any game. In fact, the first week, I was talking to my brother Mac, and he was like, I honestly don't think we're going to make it to next weekend. And I was like, the fact that I just got a week of baseball was wonderful. For my family, it's wonderful. We turn the ball game, every ball game. We turn it on out back. We got a TV on our deck. I watch the game, Jessica and I, and my boys are literally in the yard acting out everything that's happening on TV. We love sports. It's a family thing for us. It gives my dad and I something to talk about that doesn't lead to an argument. Like it's refreshing. It's a reprieve. For me, it's an escape. It's a nightly vacation. So to have any baseball has been wonderful. And then MLS came back. They started playing some games. You've got golf gearing back up. Some tournaments. They just had a major, had the PGA Championship just 2 weeks ago. The Masters is going to happen in November. And yet, here we are, all of us suffering through one of the most difficult 6 months any of us have ever had to live through. Now, if you were alive during World War II, that doesn't necessarily apply to you, or if you've gone into war, that doesn't. But for the normal American, yeah, I know, sure, the crash, 07, 08, 09, that was terrible. September 11th was terrible, but I mean, this pandemic has been a once in a generation, a once every 100 years type event. And we weren't ready for it, and we've all been dealing with it. And it stunk. Like, it's been terrible. And finally, we get sports back, which is exciting. Something to watch on TV, something to talk about. But in the middle of all of this, you've got these major sports leagues deciding to get political. Now, there's always been a history of sports and politics. going all the way back to Jackie Robinson. Baseball in particular. You follow baseball. Baseball has always dealt internally what society's dealing with externally. You can study the history of baseball, and it'll give you a really good understanding of the history of America. Baseball has had to deal with the same things that American society has had to deal with things. From the unions in the 1910s and 20s. What is a monopoly? What rights do workers have? What rights do the owners have? To dealing with civil rights and Jackie Robinson and integration. To unionizing in the 70s. I mean, baseball has dealt with these things. So there's always been a political... Muhammad Ali was incredibly well-known, popular, and very political, especially during the late 60s and 70s when there were a lot of social injustices occurring. Muhammad Ali was able to step into that, refusing to go into the draft, refusing to volunteer for war, taking that stand. So sports and politics have always been intertwined. I'm not saying that, but we're in an environment where you have the public at large really needing a form of entertainment, like really needing a pick-me-up, really needing an escape from their suffering. And sports historically provides that, but immediately the NBA, I was so excited we're going to have an NBA season, and they told us right from the beginning, all of the players will be wearing Black Lives Matter shirts. Black Lives Matter will be plastered across the floor. I'm watching on the news Black Lives Matter protesters burn down American cities and violently assault innocent individuals. I believe that they're a pseudo-Marxist domestic terrorist organization. Like, I get that black people have issues with things that are happening in society. Some of it's absolutely justified. Some of it's not. But basketball, to make it a platform that alienates half the country, is a total turnoff. As soon as I knew that was going to happen, I was so excited for basketball, I said, I'm not watching a game. In fact, I turn off ESPN when they show highlights. It irritates me. Aside from that, Major League Baseball opening day. Also doing a BLM thing on the back of on the mounds. You had the baseball logo with BLM. I wasn't going to let all of my joy get robbed, and so I just thanked the Lord. I was dyslexic, and all I read was the Major League Baseball logo. It said MLB, not BLM. But you'll notice how the NBA ratings have tanked. Major League opening day was super low. And that stuff for Major League Baseball, they've put on the back burner. We had this thing take place in Wisconsin. Another altercation. Jacob Blake. And what happened? The NBA, they end up protesting and they refuse to play games to make a stand. And not only that, but Major League Baseball games were canceled. The NBA was going to shut down their season, and then apparently they had a conversation with the union that was like, yeah, you're going to lose a ton of money if you do this, and they, backed off. Soccer has suspended games. Here's the deal. I get upset about injustices that happen in our world all of the time, but that doesn't mean that I can boycott going to work. The problem that pro athletes have is that they have a lofty view of themselves, not based in reality, because most of us don't care about their politics. I'll pick up that thought when we come back. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. I'm talking about sports in the context of what's been happening very recently, where sports are being used by the players as their platform for politics. Now, you're free to make whatever political statements you want on your own time. You're not free to make political statements on the job, unless your employer allows you to. There was a big controversy last week with Goodyear, the tire company. An internal memo was leaked out from their HR department where they had a list of approved causes you could support at work and a list of forbidden causes that you couldn't support at work. As you can imagine, you're not allowed to wear a MAGA hat, but you can wear a BLM t-shirt. The president commented, and they got a bunch of flack. Private companies can do what they want. They're beholden to their shareholders, and if their shareholders revolt, then they'll deal with it. Sports, though, is designed to be an escape and a reprieve. It's a TV show. It's entertainment. And to me, one of the things that is just nauseating, and I think the players across these leagues don't realize, is America is dying because of this coronavirus. And they have an opportunity to minister to society at large by giving us something to enjoy. Something that isn't shoving politics in our face, because we're getting that everywhere. Something that isn't shoving an agenda down our face, because we're getting that everywhere. Like, sports uniquely can unify, where we can set aside our differences and we can join together and root for our team. And yet, because they've interjected this toxic politics into sports to the point that they refuse to play games. Imagine that. They refuse to play games. I get outraged, really upset with things, but I can't just not do my job. I get fired. You see, they think their voice matters. Guess what? We don't watch them for their voice. We watch them because they dribble basketballs really well and they shoot them, or they kick a soccer ball great, or they can hit a baseball real far. Like, we are not fans because of your politics. We're not fans because you're some type of societal leader. Like, we don't look to you to be our leaders. You think you're way more important than the rest of us see you. You're not that important, to the point we'll turn you off. I'm wrestling with this, with basketball. Again, I'm a diehard basketball fan. Now, one of the things that's been, I guess, lucky is the Atlanta Hawks weren't very good, and thus they haven't been playing at all. They weren't good enough to go to the bubble, and so the Hawks haven't been pushing this in my face. I did strategically unfollow them on Twitter, as well as all of the players, because I just didn't want to get soured on a team that I enjoy to watch. But sure enough, standing in solidarity with these players that refuse to work, refuse to provide the service to the Americans that pay their salaries, people looking forward to working a long, hard day, they get home and they're excited about watching their team. I get to exhale. And then what? Their team quit on them. That's how most Americans see this. Our teams quit on us. Dear brother of mine, his name's Kyle, is a rabid Atlanta United soccer fan. I don't get it, but he's committed, diehard. Wears all the gear, goes to as many games as he can, never misses a match. In fact, he's got a Hulu subscription primarily so that he can watch Atlanta United soccer games. And 2 nights ago, Wednesday night, what happened? Kyle gets home from work. He's super pumped up. He gets online. He's reading all the threads about the game, finding out who's starting, who's going to be doing this. And an hour before kickoff, game's been canceled because of Black Lives Matter, because of what's happened to Jacob Blake, what happened in Wisconsin. My friend, who, again, is a diehard Atlanta United fan, gave up. He said, forget it. I'll never watch another soccer game. I'm done with it. We were talking about it, and he was like, I just don't understand. I don't understand why they would do this, why they think this is smart business. And the reality is you got basketball and you've got soccer leading the charge on these social movements. And the reason that they can do it is that they're, I'd say 80 to 90% of their viewership are liberals. And so there's an expectation that they should protest. And if not, there's a fear of repercussions. I told Kyle, I said, they don't care about keeping your viewership. They don't care about you. Dealing with basketball, dealing with the Hawks. I was talking to Jessica this morning because, again, in the fall, once baseball's over, we get into the winter, we watch all the Hawks games, and my son pretends like he's Trae Young. They play basketball in the living room. And I'm so sick and I don't want to watch basketball. And Jessica was like, how are you going to explain this to your son, why we're no longer Hawks fans? And I was like, I have no idea. And as of right now, I have no idea. It's insanity. You know, the NFL got in trouble a few years ago with the Colin Kaepernick deal and the players kneeling. And their viewership tanked. There was a tangible consequence to what was perceived to be insulting to the flag and the national anthem. And I can't believe that the NFL hasn't learned their lesson because they're inching ever so close to doing this as well. And man, I'm just telling you, people will turn you off. Now, the thing that really, good grief. Okay, so let's back up. I was talking with Creighton. We had dinner last night. He's doing well, by the way. He's working a lot. We're just trying to get back on a good schedule here so he can get back on the show. But you know, he made the comment, we were talking about Jacob Blake. And again, if you don't know about Jacob Blake had committed sexual assault, had multiple warrants out for his arrest. The cops get a phone call from one of the ladies that he had assaulted saying he's here, he's threatening me. The cops show up. There's an altercation. The cops let him up. He walks around to his car. They're tracking him. We don't exactly know what happens there, but the guy gets shot. He's not dead. He's in intensive care. He resisted arrest. There were warrants out for his arrest. He was a violent recidivist. And people say he was reaching into the car for a gun or a knife. There was eyewitnesses that say a knife. Either way, he got shot. And as a result of that, Kenosha, Wisconsin has been burned to the ground. Like, been burned to the ground. Like, BLM went into that town and just systematically destroyed everything. And I was talking to Creighton, and he said, you know, like when you watch the George Floyd situation, you know, there was justification for outrage. Like, it looked real bad. I mean, that cop having his knee on that man's neck and him crying out, I can't breathe, can't breathe. Like, start crying out for like, it was bad tape, a bad look, sketchy. So going out into the streets and peacefully protesting, which lasted about like 24 hours before it all turned violent, was understandable. Like, you watch the video, you could understand it. You could see it. The visuals were not good. It was suspect. Now, come to find out, interesting, the coroner has released a preliminary report that under different circumstances, George Floyd's death would have been attributed to an overdose because he had lethal levels of methamphetamine and fentanyl. So he was likely to die anyway. So when he's saying, I can't breathe, when they're not doing anything to him early in the video, like, he's ODing on fentanyl. But even then, like, there was, like, everybody who watched that video was like, man, that makes me feel really uncomfortable. Anything about this Jacob Blake situation, you're like, oh my goodness. Yeah, I feel bad that the guy got shot, but I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be real. I don't know what else the cops could have done there. Creighton made the point that the reaction to Jacob Blake is just, there's a disconnect because it's like, this doesn't seem to be the situation you get all indignant about. It's crazy. The NBA, we got a Braves game tonight. I hope and pray that they play and they don't try to ram this stuff down my throat. Because again, I think they're supporting what they actually don't understand. Now, I think LeBron James totally understands. I think LeBron James is a racist and hates white people. Read some of his comments. I think LeBron James and his circle of people know exactly what's going on. They're part of it strategically, and he's calling a lot of shots. But I think your run-of-the-mill basketball player, your run-of-the-mill, you think those Latino MLS players have any idea what's going on? In fact, they fled countries that are socialist and totalitarian. Like, they don't protest in their own countries when it comes to this type of stuff. This is all happening from on high, and there's a lot of people that are just pawns, just going along. Because it's easier, it is easier to go with the flow than to swim against the tide. Because in this environment, man, there are consequences. But it's about time there should be consequence for people just cramming this stuff down our throat. Let me take a moment here before we wrap up the first half of the Outlaw Radio Show to kind of articulate some contact information. Our email address is info@outlawradio.org. We are on Facebook, as long as they'll allow us to be. You can find us facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw. Our Twitter handle for the Outlaw Radio Show is radio_outlaw. This is the first time I've done this, but my personal handle is Zach_Adams, ZACH_ADAMS. Like us, follow us, engage with us. Again, our YouTube channel is outlawradio.live. It's the easiest way to find it. Every episode of the Outlaw Radio Show is podcasted on Apple's platform, Google's platform, as well as Spotify. You can find all of this information from outlawradio.org. Again, outlawradio.org. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. I've been talking about sports, sharing some of my thoughts. Man, Major League Baseball, NBA, football, these guys need to realize that they're in the entertainment business. And that especially in this environment, with what society's going through, our culture needs something without politics plastered all over it. And you would like to think that it would be our sports teams, but it hasn't been. I want to talk about, because I brought up Jacob Blake, something else that's really just ticked me off, honestly. So by now you've probably seen the video of this 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse. 17-year-old, armed with an AR-15, joins a group in Kenosha, Wisconsin, to help clean up the graffiti, clean up from the looting and the riots. He's part of a group that were going to police the streets. Why? Because the police aren't policing the streets. The police are supposed to protect life, liberty, property, and they're not. So Kyle, part of a group, 17-year-old kid. Now, right from the beginning, it's a shame that he felt the obligation to go out and police the streets. No 17-year-old kid should be out policing anything, yet alone out and about with an AR-15 with a magazine clip that holds 30 rounds. Like, this is a recipe for disaster. And sure enough, violence descended again on Kenosha. Things started to get real. A Molotov cocktail gets thrown at him. He turns, he runs away. At least these are the facts as we know them now. At this point, there is video. As he's running away, he's being chased by a few individuals, one of which has a skateboard. He trips, he gets kicked, he hits the ground. The guy with the skateboard whacks him. He then goes for the gun, the AR-15. At this point, another individual comes around brandishing a handgun. Looks like he's going to shoot Kyle. At this point, again, you can watch the video as he's laying on his back. Anthony Huber, the guy with the skateboard that hit him, that's trying to get the gun. Kyle discharges the weapon. Anthony dies. Shoots the guy that comes at him with a handgun. He's severely injured. You could probably see the video where half of his arm's kind of blown off. It's sick. Another guy goes to attack him. He shoots and kills another. He kills two. 2 dead, 1 injured. He then gets up. Everyone's fleeing. And he walks to the police line with his hands up. He calls it, "I killed somebody." He walks and surrenders. They don't even believe he's the shooter. They're looking for somebody else. He's like, "No, I'm the shooter." He turns himself in. Now, there is video the guy this 17-year-old, I don't know where his parents are. This should not have been in the streets. Should not have been brandishing a weapon. Should not have been in this situation at all. Finds himself, though, in a bad spot. And if you watch the video, you're kind of left to the conclusion that he had no other choice but to defend himself. It was either kill or be killed. And I know that's rough to hear, but that's the truth. Now, what blows my mind is he has been charged with 6 criminal accounts, the most severe of which is first-degree intentional homicide. That means he went there intending to kill someone. There is zero evidence of this at all. Like, there's no evidence whatsoever. First-degree intentional homicide is a gross over-prosecution. A misdemeanor, consequences may be sure. 6 criminal accounts with first-degree intentional homicide. Now, the police officer with George Floyd also got the book thrown at him. The problem with that is what's been released about his toxicology report is that they've overcharged there too. If you remember all the way back in the Ferguson case, Michael Brown, that cop got arrested for shooting Michael Brown dead. You know, he was acquitted of all charges. Not just acquitted by the local DA, the Obama administration, Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, they went in, couldn't find anything to charge him with. In St. Louis, a new prosecutor comes in, still drops the case. They overcharged. They overprosecuted. And what happens when this overprosecution takes place? People have their expectations that something's good. You know, you want to know why so many in the African American community feel as though that there are 2 tiers of justice and that injustices, that cops aren't held accountable. The reason cops are not held accountable is because we got liberal, crazy prosecutors that overcharge and can't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. As soon as this kid gets in front of a jury and you see that videotape, there is not a single person that will agree that this was first-degree intentional homicide. In fact, remember the name Nicholas Sandmann? He was the Covington prep school kid that was wearing the MAGA hat on the stairs of the Lincoln Memorial. And you had the Native American gentleman with the drum beating it. You know, and the whole news networks called him a racist, a MAGA hat wearing racist, tore that guy's reputation up and down. 17-year-old kid. I mean, slander. Well, he hired a guy by the name of Lynn Wood, and he won libel cases, defamation cases, CNN, I think the Washington Post. He's got multiple lawsuits out. He's already won some. That kid's a multi-millionaire because of the hyperbole spouted by our media that's unjustified. Lynn Wood has now taken Kyle Rittenhouse's case pro bono. I'm telling you. What's a shame is that when that kid gets acquitted, first, his life is ruined. Secondly, we're going to have more riots. When the cop that kneeled on the neck of George Floyd gets acquitted, we're going to have riots in the streets. They're setting this up for perpetual violence in the streets. You know, I was thinking about this as I was prepping for the show, but who are these people, right? I mean, if you're like me, you're deeply grieved and concerned every time you turn on the news and you see just mayhem, chaos. Last night, I'm watching President Trump give his speech there at the White House, on the front lawn. Long speech, good speech. Fireworks show was awesome. But you had out front of the White House a group of vandals, protesters. They were violent, anarchists, BLM. There's video after video after video. There was one elderly man that they cornered and they beat him down unconscious. There's videotape of police officers. There's a new phrase called bricking. Have you heard of it? It's when police officers get clocked in the head with a brick from a protester who throws it he doesn't see. I mean, this is insanity. There's video of these folks leaving the White House last night. Rand Paul, one of our senators, a violent mob attacked the police that were protecting him. Came out this morning and he thanked the police department, saying that he felt like his life was in danger. Like in what world is any of this okay? And it's damaging minority communities. Again, I was talking to Creighton about this, and he goes, I don't get it. Like, as a black guy, if I'm going to burn something down, I'm going to go out into the suburbs and do it. You know, I'm not going to do it in my community. Like, if I claim to represent black people, I'm not going to intentionally hurt black businesses and black people. I'm going to go do it with the white people, right? Well, I explained to Creighton, I said, well, the reality is that they're doing it in liberal strongholds because they're mayors that are not enforcing rule of law. You've got prosecutors that won't prosecute, and you've got get out of jail without having to post bail. Like, the riots are happening in these liberal cities because they can get away with it. Again, I am thankful that President Trump hasn't destroyed federalism by sending the military in across America to deal with this. Like, he has been waiting, as he should, for these local municipalities and governors to request the National Guard be sent in. The problem is that people's lives are being ruined. And the federal government is waiting for these liberal wackadoodles to reach out and request assistance. And by the time they do it, it's way too late. I promise you, if in the streets, if, for example, last night, in front of the White House, BLM, they erected a guillotine and put an effigy of Donald Trump in it, that they were going to behead Donald Trump. Imagine if instead of black masks and black hoodies and military gear, if it was red hats that said MAGA on it, and they erected out in front of the White House a guillotine, and they put Barack Obama, an effigy of Barack Obama, on it, you think that would pass? You think that would get away with? Not a chance. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. I'm going to do that again. Kind of stuttered there. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. Our final block. As you can tell, I'm a little heated. Don't mess with my sports, man. Like, can you please keep politics out of my sports? Michael Jordan said it right, that Republicans buy sneakers too. It's the truth. Like, these big leagues don't realize, we're not all on the BLM page. What's happened in our streets is insanity. I promise you, if these were Trump supporters burning down buildings and rioting and looting, if these were Trump supporters, Barack Obama would have the military deployed, the Justice Department out in full force. Now, Trump's not destroying federalism. He's allowing the process to work. I hope when he's reelected, he changes his tune and shuts this down. It needs to be shut down. But I was thinking, like, who are these people? Like, really, who are they? And I don't really know, honestly. I've got a few theories I want to share with you. First, have you noticed that there seems to be really two groups, pretty distinct? When you got a lot of looting going on, you have a lot of African Americans in the street. When they're burning stuff down, they seem to be white Antifa. Like in Portland and Seattle, it seemed to be a lot of white people, primarily because there's not a lot of black people that live there. In Kenosha, this is Wisconsin, there's kind of a mix. First, there's no doubt that this is somewhat the manifestation of liberal, white, rich, entitled, Ivy League educated brats. Trust fund babies who are dealing with their white guilt, trying to feel important, trying to feel significant, want to be part of a revolution. These kids have paid to go to Ivy schools to be indoctrinated with the cancer of socialism. I also think that there are a lot of just loser white kids. Like, these are kids with no future, no hope. They've dropped out of school. Their lives stink. And they're nihilists. It's kind of like, I'm just going to burn it down because there's nothing on TV, and why not just go burn something down? Like, you have a group of people that there is an actual ideology fueling their actions. The other group, I think that there's just the absence of all ideology that's fueling their actions. Nihilism. I don't care. I don't care about you. Just burn it all down. Don't care. There's no doubt that there's also a huge contingency of gangbangers, of actual criminals. You know what isn't being discussed much is, you know what happened right before these protests and riots started taking place in these cities? Do you remember? Let me remind you. As the pandemic was getting worse in April, beginning of May, end of April, beginning of May, you started seeing these reports that COVID was spread. There was a fear that COVID was spreading in the prisons. And so in our humanity, a lot of these liberal big cities released thousands of prisoners. Now, first, if masks work so well, why couldn't you just give every prisoner a mask and then they would be fine, right? I mean, if masks are what we told is the remedy, then why couldn't you just give everybody that's incarcerated a mask, because they'll be fine, because masks work so well. No, they released all of these criminals. New York City, across the board, Chicago. And what's happened? You then saw these protests and you saw violence. Now, no one's done a report on this, but I guarantee you a contingency of the violence that we're seeing is just the natural manifestation of when you let out of prison thousands of inmates. I read one report knowing that if they were COVID positive or they had a COVID risk, like they were trying to pass COVID through the prison so that they would all get out. It's insanity. I do think that there are a lot of people that are unemployed. I wonder if what we're seeing would be happening if we didn't have just incredible unemployment numbers because of the pandemic. There are a lot of people out of work. I wonder if that has some, if there's a component of boredom or just lashing out at the system, the establishment. By and large, I will tell you one thing I believe certain, and the other thing that I'm going to kind of extrapolate on. First, a lot of these people are the Bernie Sanders coalition. These are Bernie Sanders supporters. They're well organized, they're well funded, they are socialists, they are anarchists, Antifa. They all support the revolution of Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden couldn't appeal mainstream. Bernie Sanders, not Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders couldn't appeal mainstream, which is why he's had to now use Joe Biden as his lackey. What you're seeing is the political arm of the Democratic Party. And beyond that, let me ask, how do you think all of those people are going to vote? You think any of them are voting a Republican? I think they're all voting Democrat. Listen, there was a lot more I wanted to get to that we'll just carry over into the next episode. But I can't wrap things up without at least addressing this controversy that's developing with Jerry Falwell Jr. and specifically his wife Becky and the pool boy. Liberty University is probably the premier evangelical Christian university in America. Liberty has national notoriety. When Jerry Falwell Jr. took over the university from his father, they were small. They did not have much money, and no one was really sure if Liberty would survive. Jerry Falwell Jr. Took it from being a small school to a significant university, has turned it into a billion-dollar enterprise. Well, it was released a week ago that his wife, Becky, had an affair. Now, the way that we got this information is really sketchy. First, the Falwells were the ones that came out and admitted this affair. And then you immediately got the pool boy that came out and gave his side of the story in the press. What's interesting about it all is apparently they were being extorted. Now I bring this up because clearly Becky Falwell has some issues. I think Jerry Falwell has some issues too. Mistakes have definitely been made. Sin, infidelity, adultery, they should step away from the limelight. But you know, I just want to caution Christians, and this is the only reason I'm bringing this up. Be careful throwing stones. Like, be careful casting stones. This is a couple that has issues. And they need the love of Jesus and the support of the church. They don't need to be ridiculed, made fun of. Trust me, the world's going to do enough of that. They need Christians, Christianity, the church at large. Yeah, you got to step back, bud. But you know what? We want to help you. We want to see your marriage survive. We want to see things restored. Again, we'll talk about it a little bit more. I'm sure there's a lot more to the story, but I wanted to at least introduce the thought. Well, you've been listening to the Outlaw Radio Show. If you liked what you heard, I want to encourage you to contact your local Christian radio station and tell them you're thankful they're carrying the Outlaw Radio Show in your community. If you're listening on the radio or on our podcast, please take a second and check out outlawradio.live. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I really do mean it when I say that we love hearing from you. Questions, feedback, testimonials, critiques, it's all fair game, man. Easily access our contact information. Just go to outlawradio.org. As always, many props to DJ Dust for the dope music, and a sincere thanks to my partner in crime, dear friend, brother, Mr. Josh Brown, and his incredible staff over at his productions. Once again, my name is Zach Adams. I hope you join me again this time next week for more of the Outlaw Radio Show.